Boom! Welcome to Power of Marvel Legends, the YouTube channel where we review every single one of the very articulate, highly posable, incredibly sought out action figures known as Marvel Legends.
Shout out to the Powers of X-Men podcast, Dayspring and Flinkman.
I'm the Uncanny Dayspring.
And I'm the adjectiveless Flinkman.
Boom! What's up, familia? Dayspring here to discuss what we can anticipate to see at the X-Men 60th anniversary panel happening this Thursday, March 16th at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's going to be a big event. It's going to be a retrospective. We're going to see the X-Men from the 05 to the Krakoan Age, and they've assembled an entire team of creatives who have been with the X-Men along the way, including Chris Claremont. Shout out to Daddy Claremont. Walt and Louise Simonson, Mark Silvestri, Rob Liefeld, Jonathan Hickman, Jerry Dugan, and of course, Grant Morrison will be there. And I have to tell you, I'm so excited that they will be there because Grant Morrison, when they were writing New X-Men, that's what brought me back to the X-Men books like full time. So, like many people, I kind of jumped off of the X books around, Operation Zero Tolerance. And I checked in here and there, especially with like Nate. I was reading X-Men comics, but I wasn't really reading the main books until we got to Murder at the Mansion in New X-Men. So a little late in Grant Morrison's run, but I got there. And let me tell you, I've been reading the books monthly, or at least checking in on the books monthly since Murder at the Mansion debuted back in Oh God, it must have been like 2003 or something like that at this point. So we do have the panel, and I think that's going to be a retrospective. Do I think we're going to get any announcements on new stories? Maybe. I wouldn't really bank on it. And if we are, I don't think it's going to be anything like that insane. I think we may get like a slight tease about Fall of X. Maybe they're going to announce the official creatives for that if they haven't already. But I don't expect to hear like Grant Morrison, they will be returning. I don't expect to hear like Mark Silvestri is going to be doing a series of covers. They may announce something like that, actually, now that I'm saying it out loud, that these artists are going to do like a series of covers for an anniversary, anniversary celebration. So maybe we'll have some variant covers there. So maybe on that, but I don't know if we're going to actually get any major announcements with like stories and stuff like that, if that makes sense. What I do think is going to happen is we are going to get some new information on X-Men 97 because as part of these creatives that they've assembled, we are going to get Eric and Julia Lewald, who need no introduction. Eric was the original showrunner for X-Men, the animated series back in 1992, and Julia Lewald was one of the writers writing stories like Days of Future Past, the adaptation they did in season 1. They're also going to have Bo DeMaio, who is the showrunner, executive producer, and writer for X-Men 97. So I think it's a real safe bet to assume that they're going to give us some kind of X-Men 97 trailer, which I'm really excited for. Now, X-Men 97 is rumored to be coming out in the fall around September or October. I'm hoping they'll do October 31st like the original series, because that would be absolutely baller. But anytime between September and October, I'm going to be really happy. But it is rumored to be coming out then. It may be a little too early to drop a full-blown trailer, but I think we can get somewhat of a teaser. We got some of the character designs at San Diego, and we've seen like short little animation blips here and there. Mainly the one behind me where the Blackbird is kind of like zooming past. So I thought for this episode, kind of manage our expectations for X-Men 97, right? I think we are going to get a little more so of information on Thursday. So I wanted to sort of go through what we should be expecting out of a series like X-Men 97. And the first thing I do want to talk about is I think we can expect a second season. I know that's sort of been reported out there. I mean, they've been like, oh, X-Men 97 is already picked up for a season 2. I don't think it's official. It's not like someone official has announced that. But I think that's a little misleading. I think the way traditional animation is kind of manufactured is from a cost efficiency perspective. You order 22 episodes of animation, and in the past that would be like your first season, and then you would do another 22 episodes and that'd be your second season. I think given that X-Men 92 had like 12 episode seasons, and the current trend with seasons are now that we no longer do 22, we do like 7 to 12 episodes, right, for a season. I think it's safe to assume that they ordered 22 episodes and they're going to divide that 12 for season 1 and then 12 for season 2. So, let's just like put it out there. I think even if X-Men 97 is absolutely terrible, which I don't think it will be, I don't think this is going to be a terrible series, but I'm just saying in the event that it gets like just panned and no one likes it, I think it's safe to assume that we are going to at least get that second season, no matter how terrible it could be. But, I think we should be really excited for the series. It's already going to look beautiful. We know that Amelia Vidal is going to be doing the animation. If you follow her on Twitter or Instagram, she has absolutely beautiful character designs. I don't feel worried about how the show is going to look. I'm actually really excited for it. And I think another thing that was kind of revealed at our panel in San Diego was that we know that Larry Houston is going to be directing the intro to the series. And I think that's going to be absolutely wonderful because Larry Houston is such a big fan of the X-Men. He was a source of knowledge for the team because he was a series director, but also he was a source of knowledge because he read these books and he knew them. And this is a time before Wikipedia. This is a time before the internet existed, that you actually had to go out and read the source material in order to sort of understand what was happening, even though you had no clue who Madeline Pryor was and her relation to Jean Grey. Now we have it in bite-sized information where we can all sort of comprehend the stories. But people like myself growing up, people like Larry Houston who were working on the series, actually went out and read the source material. So Larry Houston's going to deliver a wonderful intro. I think we can expect the theme song will be back. Maybe it's going to be an iteration of it, an updated version, but the theme song, as it always has been, will remain. And we know this because in several instances, the theme song has appeared already in the MCU proper when Xavier came into Multiverse Madness, and when it was revealed that Ms. Marvel is a mutant in the Ms. Marvel Disney Plus series, we heard the little song play, and it's credited as X-Men 97 theme. So one thing I will say, I don't think, because let's talk about that they're using that song in the MCU. I think that's just a musical cue for the X-Men. I wouldn't take it as the X-Men animated series. Oh, there's Spider-Palm. Portrait of Spider-Palm. I wouldn't take it as the X-Men 97 as they exist or an extension of the MCU. I've heard some people say that. That doesn't make any sense. I think this is just going to be a straight up revival of the original X-Men animated series. It's going to be a continuation of those characters and their stories, but they do not live in the MCU in any way, shape, or form. This is just a cartoon in the way that other cartoons have existed for these Marvel properties. So, one of the things I think that the opening will do is it'll be something fun. It'll be different. I hope it's not a straight up homage to the original, right? Like I've seen a lot of these revival series always like doing a parody of what came before it, or just doing like a strict, lifting of what came before. I hope that is not the case. As much as I love seeing the Blackbird and Rogue and Storm flying outside of it and zooming in on Cyclops' eyes, I want an entirely different intro on that. But I think the format's going to stay the same in that we're going to go through all the characters that are on the team. And I think within that, we'll get a couple of surprises. Like maybe we'll find out like Jean's not on the team, right? And Psylocke is on the team, right? So I would anticipate we're going to see new characters in the intro as well as some old faces. But the format where it's going to go Cyclops, Wolverine, Storm, Rogue, that kind of like each character is going to get their minute. I think we're 100% going to get that format again. And again, I want to see what it means to be a mutant in this new time for them. So, you know, for the X-Men 92 opening, we see Jubilee running because a mob is behind her, like Friends of Humanity, whoever it is coming at her, and she grabs onto the chain like linked fence, and you see her eyes in terror. I wonder how they're going to render what it means to be a mutant, you know, with a couple years progressing there. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be a fun intro. Now, in terms of overall stories, I'm curious what they're going to do, because the thing the original animated series did was take modern stories and also old stories and have them exist like on its own time frame. Right. So we had Phalanx Covenant, we had the Dark Phoenix saga, all in the span of a couple of seasons from each other. You know, they did an adaptation of Days of Future Past. They had Icemen. They had their own standalone Iceman story. So I think it will be really hard to like pinpoint exactly what they will do or what era they will focus on, because they are calling this X-Men 97, which is an interesting number because the original series was just called X-Men, the animated series. It wasn't really billed as X-Men 92. You know, we call it X-Men 92 because that's the way we're going to differentiate from that series and this series. But that is 5 years later. And I wonder, is this going to take place in the year 1997? Now, obviously, there were a couple of stories happening in the mid 90s that I'm a huge fan of, you know, Onslaught, Age of Apocalypse, you know, Creed being assassinated, Operation Zero Tolerance. I would be happy to see an adaptation of Onslaught and Zero Tolerance, but the series has a lot of work to do in terms of doing something like Onslaught or even Age of Apocalypse again. Because of one thing I'm going to tell you that I really appreciate about the Lee Wald's approach, and I think I'm more than certain Bo DeMaio is taking this approach. You have to let these stories marinate and grow, right? We want people who are going to be writers first, not people who are rushing just to do a storyline because it's popular in the comics. We saw this with the Fox X-Men multiple times when they tried to do something like Dark Phoenix, right? Dark Phoenix is just not a story you rush. Dark Phoenix has to be a story that you built up to. Jean has to be established as the heart and soul of the X-Men. Jean has to go into space and sacrifice herself and become Phoenix. That power has to slowly corrupt her. And then you get to the Dark Phoenix, right? You can't just wake up and be like, hey, we're going to reboot the X-Men, and the second movie here is going to be Dark Phoenix now that we have Sophie Turner, which, again, no shade to Sophie Turner because I liked Sophie Turner as Jean, but that was a very rushed story, and it didn't need that should have been at least a 2-3 movie setup. Yes, in Apocalypse, they kind of alluded to her having the Phoenix, but they didn't really do much with it. They didn't even connect it to that. So that's a long-winded way of saying that I'm pretty confident that Bo DeMaio will follow the Lee Walls in that for a story like Age of Apocalypse and Onslaught, you have to reestablish this universe first and then build towards it. And what do I mean by that? Well, we know the series originally ended with Xavier getting ill and going off to space with Lilandra, which is a verbatim thing from the comics. So I think we're going to pick up, you know, in sort of that 80s vibe where Magneto is leading the X-Men. We have the New Mutants at the Academy. Maybe they're at odds with Emma Frost. Xavier is probably off in space with the Starjammers and housing a little sliver of the Phoenix. I would love to see Bald Phoenix appear, but I think that's sort of where we're going to pick up. And given that we saw some of that art already with Magneto in his purple suit, I think Magneto, we're going to get a trial of Magneto from the X-Men versus Avengers where he goes up against the World Court. I think we're going to get that iconic shot of him, you know, like, cuffed or not cuffs. He has like these big, like metal things on his hands. I think we're going to see something like that for Magneto. I also think that Rogue is probably going to have a really big role in the series, given her popularity because of Lenore Zan's iconic voice. But I wonder if she's going to be in a relationship with Magneto. Will we get a Savage Land episode with her and Magneto? Are we going to get Joseph in this? Was that where they'll kind of like sprinkle in some 90s stuff? I would love it. X-Men 97, give us Joseph. I'm 100% here for it. But I think it's pretty safe to say that Magneto is going to be in a leadership role in the X-Men as we kick off, and that Xavier is going to have a way back to the X-Men, right? I think he's going to be fine at the beginning of the series, and they're going to get him, back on Earth somehow. I would also expect, given again that it's 97, I just mentioned I'd love to see Joseph. I think it's safe to say we'll probably see some 90s characters. I'm hoping we get like an Adam X. I'm hoping that we get like an Executioner, a Game Master. Let's see what kind of characters are going to be appearing. Like Domino in her 90s outfit, I would love to see that so much. If I was on the production team, I would think 90s Domino is someone you're going to want to have on this. What I wouldn't expect, again, is going to be Onslaught or Age of Apocalypse. I think that is going to have to be a built up to those shows. So I think it's safe to say that Age of Apocalypse and Onslaught would probably be a second season or second, production episode. I would not expect Krakoa. And I think if they do Krakoa, I would be very disappointed. Only because I think Krakoa is great in the comics right now, but I think it's something that you have to again build towards. There's so many stories that are already part of the X-Men canon that you can adapt before you go to Krakoa. You can do Inferno, you can do Executioner Song, you can do Zero Tolerance, you could do the 12, New X-Men, Messiah Complex. So before you get to Krakoa, let's assume this is going to last for 10 years. The series is going on for 10 years. Great. You can get to Krakoa later on, tell all these other stories. I wouldn't expect any Avengers versus X-Men, but I would expect some Avengers and rising tension with the Avengers to be sprinkled throughout, especially if we're going to get into Wanda. I wonder how they're going to address Wanda. That is a huge question mark, because we have had people on the podcast who've written X-Men 92 in the comic books, and they have adapted certain storylines, but we know that they do consider Wanda a mutant in terms of that canon. But officially, now that this is a continuation of the series in X-Men 97, is Wanda still going to be a mutant? Is she allowed to be a mutant, from an IP perspective? Are they okay with being like, okay, well, that version of Scarlet Witch can remain a mutant, or you can just be sort of vague about it? But I would expect Wanda as well. I think you're going to see Wanda there. I wouldn't expect Nate Gray. You know how much I love Nate Gray. I'm sorry to say I don't think Nate Gray will be there. All right, familia, that's it. That's a quick little episode. I just wanted to get out the door so we know what to expect come Thursday. We'll, of course, be doing a follow-up on the panel. After it's over, we'll drop a really quick recap so everyone's in the loop. Bye!